Hi everybody, this is the Palace of Forest. I'm Old Joan. Today we are talking about a country, Tunisia. Do you know the way to Dougga? Last time I talked about Lebanon. Before it was the Phoenicians who were very active along the Mediterranean coast before the Romans come to power. They were involved in purple dye, trading ships, and prosperous commercial ports. One of their bases was Carthage in Tunisia. In 2005, I visited Tunisia to see a client and had an opportunity to visit this country. When the Romans began to rise, the Carthaginians were their direct opponents. They fought 3 bloody Punic Wars from 264 to 146 BC. The Second Punic War was led by General Hannibal, a famous military commander and a renowned military family. Hannibal famously marched his elephant across Alps, but due to the long supply lines and facing Rome's top general, Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus, it ended in defeat. Afterwards, these 2 generals, many years later, could sit down and discuss the art of war. Scipio asked Hannibal who the greatest military commander in history was. Hannibal replied, Alexander the Great, Cyrus, and myself. We all know Alexander the Great, but who is Cyrus? Cyrus is the king of a small country nearby, Euphorius, in charge of military camp sites and supplies. 279 BC, Euphorius defeated Romans. So, in Chinese book, a military defeat or win depends on the supplies and the camp. So that's very important. Scipio then asked, what if you had defeated me? Hannibal said, then I would have surpassed Alexander, Cyrus, in fact, all commanders. Do you understand? They respect each other, and Hannibal flattered Scipio. The Third Punic War resulted in the destruction of Carthage. It's completely destroyed. They even salted the land so nothing would grow again. It was a terrible sight indeed. I stood on the hill of this room. The sea breeze blew, and it felt as if I could hear the cries of the Carthaginians from over 2,000 years ago. Because these Romans received help from the local people in the south, known as Berbers. They called this land Africa. After defeating Carthage, the Romans turned it into a new province, hence the name Africa. A guide took me to Dougga, the ruins left behind by the Romans. We wandered among the pillars, and the guide pointed out the entrance of the forum, the public baths, the mosaic pictures, and even the baths on every street. Why? The guide explained that because the Romans conquered so many territories, men become slaves and women become prostitutes. Eventually, there were too many of them, leading the supply over demand. It was truly uncomfortable. I sighed at the thought. Speaking of mosaic pictures, you must visit the Bardo Museum in Tunis. It is the second largest museum in Africa, second only to the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. It houses many mosaics, like one of the finest collections in the world. There are also numerous Roman artifacts, including statues of Roman emperors. The museum collection is incredibly rich and worth a visit. But wait, on March 18, 2015, two terrorists held tourists hostage in the museum, resulting in a shootout with the police. The terrorists were killed, but 21 tourists and one police officer lost their lives. After that, the museum closed. It was reported online that it reopened in the winter of 2023, but it's truly a jewel of Tunisian heritage. It would be a shame not to visit. The Arab Springs began in 2010. It wasn't just the chaos. It became even more chaotic, and the chaos continued. It spread throughout North Africa and the Mediterranean coast for 10 years. The way from Tunis to Dougga, we passed by the World War II American soldiers' cemeteries in North Africa. It was not as large as the ones from Turkish and Anglo-French conflicts, but it shows how deeply the Americans were involved in global affairs after World War II. My client's victory is in the industrial city of Sfax in the South Tunisia. Driving along the Mediterranean Sea, we encountered a magnificent sight, the amphitheater of El Jin, which was originally a Roman arena. It's remarkably well preserved and is considered the fifth largest Roman amphitheater in the world by size. When the Romans conquered a place, their architects would immediately come to build a Roman-style city. In addition to construction, the forum and the baths, the most important was an amphitheater. In ancient time, without the movies, television, or smartphones, the amphitheater provided entertainment and served to distract citizens from political unrest. It was beneficial for the rulers. Hence, the ancient Romans built numerous arenas. They often plundered with animals from their African colonies. Sometimes they hunted animals to extinct. Apart from animal fights, there were also gladiators. Skilled fighters were chosen from the prisons and the criminals to participate. The ancient Romans were indeed very brutal and bloodthirsty. I mentioned the barbers earlier. In Sphinx, my guide asked me if I want to visit the barber area. The Romans granted the barbers a high degree of autonomy. They were skilled horsemen from childhood and had a unique style. But I was more interested in going to neighboring Libya to find a piece of natural glass in the desert. According to legend, a large meteorite fell in the Libya desert thousands or millions of years ago, and the high temperatures turned the sand into glass. One such piece was set in the necklace worn by Tutankhamun, the pharaoh of Egypt. It's yellow and carved into a shape of a beetle. For many years, archaeologists didn't know what that yellow gemstone was until they tested it and found out it was glass. But there was no glass 4,000 years ago. Only when a meteorite fell into the desert and generated high temperatures could natural glass be produced. It's said there are many yellow natural glasses formations in the southwestern Libya desert. The guide thought it was too dangerous to cross the border into Libya by land. At that time, Gaddafi was still in power and the relationship with the US were not that good. I have to give up. What a pity. When I visited Tunisia, it was considered a stable country. It has sun oil, phosphate, agricultural products, automobile parts, and tourism as its main industries. There's not much oil, so there's no chaos like in Libya. The gap between the rich and the poor is not very wide. Election began in 2014 and suspended in 2021. GDP per capita is US dollar 11,800. Not too bad. The Arab Spring also caused some chaos. Previously, North Africa was under French rule. On the plane, everybody was French, men, women, and children, all noisy. It felt like going to a French colonial resort. However, in 2005, as a single woman, I roam freely there and feel quite liberated. Local women had to wear headscarves. I wonder how it is now. Today we stop here. I hope you like it. Please forward to your friends and see you next time.